My name is Nora, and I've always been the overlooked middle child in my family's high-powered tech dynasty. My dad, as the CEO of a global tech company, has always been larger than life, at least in the eyes of the world. To me, he was more of a distant figure, wrapped up in his business deals, while my older sister, Lila, was always the one trying to live up to his impossible standards. And Dean, my younger brother, well, he could do no wrong. I remember the day everything shifted. I'd just finished a long day at work, and I was walking down the hallway of our family's sprawling home. I was heading for my guest room when I heard voices from behind my dad's office door. The words that slipped through the crack in the door felt like a blow to my chest. I froze in place. "Lila won't be part of the succession," my dad's voice boomed, like it was just another business decision. I leaned in, heart pounding in my chest, trying to hear more. "It's the best thing for the company," my father continued. "She's too emotional. You'll be a better fit for the role, Dean." Dean, my younger brother, who had always sat in the background, soaking in the admiration from our father, even when he didn't deserve it. And Lila, the one who worked tirelessly, the one who sacrificed her own happiness to chase a legacy, was being cut out. I stood frozen in the cold hallway, feeling the chill crawl through me, not physically, but emotionally. The weight of what I just overheard was sinking in, but it wasn't the betrayal that made my hands tremble. It was the realization that I wasn't part of this. I wasn't even in the room. I wasn't seen. I didn't confront them. Not then, anyway. Instead, I turned on my heel and quietly walked back to my room. The door clicked shut behind me. It was time to make sure I was taken care of, too. I sat at the desk in my room and opened my laptop. My fingers moved without hesitation, typing in the familiar password, then clicking into the encrypted account I had opened years ago. I had been smart about it, keeping a separate asset pool from the rest of the family. My grandmother, Elise, had entrusted me with more than just memories when she passed away. I had been the only one she trusted. And now, those assets were ready to come into their full power. I transferred everything into my private account. Money, stocks, a few legal documents, and the hidden deed she'd given me. The deed she had said would one day secure my place, when the time came. I wasn't just protecting myself now. I was preparing for the next move. It was clear this was just the beginning. The family I had always supported, the one that had never truly seen me, had made their choice, and it was time for me to make mine. The years of being sidelined weren't clear to me until that moment, standing in the hallway, overhearing my father's cold words. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the erasure of Lila, of me, had been happening for a long time. I had just been too loyal to see it. I'd always known that Lila was the one Dad pushed forward. She was supposed to be the perfect successor to his empire, focused, calculating, driven. And Dean, with his charm and quick smile, was the golden child who always got a free pass. But I wasn't as blind as I had been. I could connect the dots now. One incident came to mind. The charity gala for the company's philanthropic arm. I had been the one to organize the whole thing. The venue, the catering, the speeches, the guest list. My father had praised me at first, saying it was a perfect event. But when the gala photos came out, there I was, standing awkwardly on the edge of the frame, unnoticed. My face was barely visible. But Lila? She was front and center, radiant, smiling, holding a wine glass in one hand and my father's arm with the other. And I had organized it all. My work, my sweat. But none of it mattered because the pictures would tell a different story. Lila was the star. I was just the one who made it happen behind the scenes. And it didn't stop there. Slowly, my father had started to dismiss me more and more. It was the little things at first, like how he would brush off any of my suggestions as too emotional. When it came to real business, my father told me time and time again that I wasn't cut out for it. "You think too much with your heart," he'd say, waving a hand as if that was a weakness. That was the first time I realized he was pushing me aside. "Leave the real decisions to Dean," he'd say. "He's got a sharp mind for numbers." Dean, who had only ever called me when he needed financial or legal help. Dean, who was never around unless he needed something, but would always act as if I was the one who was too busy to be useful. And then there was my time with Elise, my grandmother. She had been the only one who had truly acknowledged my sacrifices. The time I spent taking care of her, especially in her final days. When I gave up my international policy analyst job to be with her. to ensure she was comfortable. No one else in the family noticed the quiet hours I spent at her bedside, just holding her hand, trying to make her smile. But they had all noticed when I took care of business for them, from negotiating contracts to settling disputes. Still, there was no recognition, no acknowledgement. I had always told myself it was part of being loyal, being family. That was my role, right? To just be there, unnoticed, and take care of what no one else could. But now I realized it was more than that. It was manipulation. They had been using me without ever truly seeing me. And when Lila couldn't fit into their perfect vision of succession, I was the next in line to be erased. Just like that. I had been giving them everything, my time, my energy, my loyalty, and I had been left out in the cold, unseen, and unnoticed. That conversation outside my father's office hadn't just been about Lila. It had been about me, too. But I wasn't the kind of person who would let that go. And I wasn't going to wait to be written out of the story altogether. No, I was done with being erased. I was done being taken for granted. Now, I had a plan. I was going to make sure that when it all came down to it, I wasn't just some shadow in the background. And it would start with the letter my grandmother had given me. The one that, at the time, I thought was just a precaution. But now, I knew better. It was my ticket to reclaiming everything I'd worked for. I could feel the power shift in me, quietly, methodically. My loyalty had been a tool for them. Now, it was time to turn that tool around and use it for my own purpose. I wasn't going to be erased any longer. It was time to take my place in this world. The sting of what I'd overheard lingered long after I left the hallway. I should have confronted them right then. I should have walked into that office and demanded answers. But I didn't. I knew better. I was playing a longer game now. But the next conversation I overheard, well, it shook me to my core. It was a few days later. I had been sitting in my study, sorting through a few papers, when I heard my father's voice again, muffled through the walls. And then, Dean's. I paused, straining to listen. "You need to make sure Lila doesn't find out about the account," my father was saying. His tone a low, calculated murmur. "We can't let her get wind of it. The money's already moved offshore. Just keep it hidden. Nora's too much of a liability at this point. She's been coddled too long. We can't afford any more mistakes." I felt the world tilt beneath me. They were talking about me again, like I wasn't even in the room. A liability? Coddled? I had sacrificed so much for this family. Yet, there I was. Just another piece of collateral damage in their relentless pursuit of control. I didn't react right away. My mind spun with a mix of anger and disbelief, but I kept it quiet. The sound of my father's voice, dismissing me like a failure, triggered a familiar feeling in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't the first time I had been treated like I was expendable. I realized it never would be. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling heavier with each step. I walked to the drawer my grandmother had entrusted to me, the one she had warned me to keep safe, the one she had said would hold my future. I opened it with trembling hands, unsure what I would find, but hoping it would be enough to help me make sense of all this. The moment my fingers closed around the heavy sealed envelope, I knew. The legal documents inside weren't just papers. They were the key to everything. I tore it open. A notarized letter, a flash drive, and a sealed document. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Elise's. The letter was brief but powerful. "Nora, I know what they are planning. You are the only one I trust to take control when the time comes. I've made provisions for you, should you ever need them. You will be the one to lead when they turn against you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Elise had seen this coming. She had known. My grandmother had always believed in me. She had always seen my worth when no one else would. And now, she had given me everything I needed to take back control. I opened the sealed document, and there it was, a legal directive. Elise had transferred majority control of her shares in the company to me. It wasn't just a trust. It was ownership. The very thing my father and brother had always worked to deny me. The flash drive, I knew, would hold more. Financial records, legal clauses, evidence. It was all there, ready for me to use when I needed it most. I sat down, staring at the documents in my hands. This was more than just an inheritance. It was a final, irrevocable act of defiance from a woman who had loved me in a way my family never had. Elise had seen something in me that they hadn't. And now it was time for me to see it too. I wasn't going to be erased any longer. I wiped the tears from my eyes. The time for playing the role of the dutiful daughter had passed. The game was changing, and this time, I would be the one calling the shots. The betrayal I had overheard wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The morning after hearing my father's betrayal, I woke up with a calmness that startled me. The documents in my hands, Elise's amended will, the transfer of ownership, were more than just paper. They were my path forward, the culmination of years of sacrifice, and the tool I needed to turn the tide. Breakfast that morning was quiet. My father, stepmother, and Dean were gathered around the table, acting as if nothing had changed. They were pretending, each of them playing their part in the family drama, still unaware that their control was slipping through their fingers. I walked into the dining room and met their surprised gazes. For a moment, no one spoke. I didn't need to say anything. The tension in the air said it all. "I think we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Without waiting for them to respond, I placed the notarized transfer of ownership and Elise's amended will on the table in front of them. The sound of the papers hitting the table was the only thing that broke the silence. My father's face changed in an instant. His eyes flicked from the papers to me, then to Elaine. His jaw tightened. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low, his facade cracking for the first time. "I think you already know," I replied. I stood tall, not flinching at the sudden heat in the room. "This is the legal transfer of majority control of Elise's shares in the company, shares that she left to me as her chosen successor." I paused, letting the words settle in. Dean shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Elaine's tight, triumphant smile faltered as she looked at the papers, realizing the gravity of the situation. She was trying to maintain her composure, but it was clear this was not part of the plan. "I already froze the secret account you've been hiding," I continued, my eyes meeting my father's. "And I verified the will's legal power with Elise's old attorney. The money, the assets, they're all accounted for. And they're mine now." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what I had just revealed was sinking in. My family was speechless, staring at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. This wasn't the daughter they could control anymore. This was the heir. My father finally cleared his throat, trying to regain his authority. "Nora, this isn't how family works. Don't," I cut him off, my voice cold but firm. "You don't get to lecture me on family after what I just overheard. After what I've given and what you've taken. No more." I stood there, watching as the realization settled in. I wasn't just some pawn in their game anymore. I wasn't the coddled daughter. I was the one who had been quietly planning her next move. "Nora, this isn't fair," Elaine spoke up, her voice trembling. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, my voice unwavering. "And I just did. You've underestimated me for too long. It ends now." I could see the panic in their eyes. They hadn't expected this, hadn't anticipated that I would fight back, that I would have the means to take control. The power dynamic had shifted, and they realized too late that I wasn't the silent daughter. I wasn't the obedient middle child. I was the one who had finally stepped into the light, ready to claim what was mine. "Get used to it," I added, my voice calm. "Things are going to change, and this time, I'm the one in charge." The room was silent as they absorbed the truth of what I had just laid before them. They didn't get to control me anymore. Elise had chosen me because of my integrity, and it was time to show them what that truly meant. I wasn't just taking back what was mine. I was reclaiming my place in this family, and it was no longer a place of silence. It was one of power. The boardroom was colder than I remembered, the air thick with tension as I stepped inside. The polished oak table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, reflecting the sleek modern design of the family tech company's headquarters. I took a deep breath and walked toward the head of the table, where I had sat many times before. Only now, I wasn't just another family member. Today, I was here to take control. Jonah, my cousin, sneered at me as I entered. He was the first to speak, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's this, Nora? A little family reunion?" I didn't respond. I just took my seat at the head of the table, flipping open a manila folder I had brought with me. The silence that followed was palpable. My father, stepmother, and Jonah watched me, but no one dared to speak. I looked around the room, meeting their eyes one by one. Then, with deliberate calm, I opened the folder and slid a stack of documents in front of Jonah. His smirk faltered as he read the first few lines. "This is what I think it is?" Jonah's voice wavered, his sneer turning into something closer to fear. "It is," I said. "And this," I continued, tapping the paper, "proves what you've been doing with company funds for years." Jonah tried to recover, leaning back in his chair, his palms open in mock surrender. "Come on, Nora. You don't think anyone's going to believe—" "No," I cut him off, my voice sharp. "I don't need anyone to believe me. I just need this to be on record." I gestured toward the board members, their attention now fully on me. "I know about the innovation ventures, the way you funneled money into dummy companies and hidden it under consulting contracts." The room went silent. No one spoke, but I could feel the weight of the eyes on me, the shift in the power dynamics. Jonah's face had gone pale, the arrogant swagger replaced by a hint of panic. Before he could react, my father burst into the room, face flushed with anger. He slammed the door behind him, clearly agitated. "What's going on here, Nora?" he demanded, his eyes darting between the documents and me. "This," I said, "is an audit." I met my father's gaze with unwavering confidence. "A full one. From now on, any financial movement above a certain threshold will require my approval." Jonah's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to protest, but I didn't let him get a word out. "You've been embezzling funds for years, Jonah," I continued, "and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The board, the shareholders, the public. Your game is over." Jonah stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. "You don't have the power." "I do," I interrupted, my tone icy. "And I'll make sure you never see a penny of that money again." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. My father's face had gone red, and his jaw tightened in that way I had seen too many times before when he was trying to keep his anger in check. But I didn't back down. "This is a coup," my father finally shouted, his voice trembling with fury. "You can't just come in here and take over like this. This is my company." "No," I said, my voice steady and calm. "It's Elisa's company. She built this, not you, and it's time for someone who understands its value to take charge. Not you, not Dean. Me." I looked at the board members, each one shifting uncomfortably in their seats. None of them dared to speak. They were waiting for someone to say something, but no one would. "Consider this a warning," I said, standing up and collecting the papers. "You will all have a chance to sign off on the new policies, or you can leave. But from now on, you answer to me." I turned to leave, but my father's voice followed me out the door. "This isn't over, Nora. You've made a mistake you can't undo." I didn't look back. Instead, I stepped into the hallway, my heart racing with a mix of adrenaline and satisfaction. The company that had always belonged to them, it was mine now. After my announcement at the board meeting, I knew it was time to take the next step. The company had been operating in the shadows for far too long, and I wasn't about to let that continue. With the legal documents in hand and my control now official, I set my sights on the books, specifically the ones that had been carefully manipulated to line the pockets of my family. I requested a full forensic audit of the company's transactions over the last 5 years. Every financial record, every invoice, every contract that had been signed, it would all be scrutinized. I wasn't just looking for small errors or oversights. I was hunting for the web of deceit that had been spun by my father, stepmother, and brother. It didn't take long for the auditors to uncover what I already suspected. There were millions of dollars funneled into dummy companies under the guise of consulting contracts and innovation ventures. Each transaction was more insidious than the last, each one carefully designed to avoid the light of scrutiny. Jonah had been the mastermind, using his family ties to hide his theft. But it wasn't just him. Dean had been complicit, taking his cut whenever it suited him. And Elaine? She had orchestrated the whole thing, working quietly from the shadows to protect the family's secrets. I had all the proof now. The transfer documents, the payments, the fake invoices. Everything was in place. I compiled it all, sending the files to the legal team with a simple directive: pursue prosecution. As I closed my office door, my mind raced. I had been patient for so long, but now the walls were closing in on them. The family I had once been loyal to would be exposed for who they really were: greedy, manipulative, and corrupt. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to find Jonah standing in the doorway, his face pale and disheveled, His suit wrinkled as if he'd been up all night. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice shaky. I didn't stand up. I just nodded for him to come in. He shut the door behind him, and for a moment, we were both silent. His eyes darted around the room, like he was trying to find a way to fix things. "You don't have to do this, Nora," he said finally. "This family, everything we've worked for, you're going to destroy it all." His voice was laced with desperation. "Everything you've worked for?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean everything you stole? I'm not destroying anything. I'm fixing it." He stepped forward, pleading now. "You don't understand. If you go through with this, you'll lose everything. You'll be alone. You think you're doing the right thing, but it's going to ruin us." I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "You already ruined this family, Jonah. Not me. You did. You and the rest of them." His face contorted with a mixture of fear and anger. "You think I don't know what's at stake? I've had to work my whole life under the shadow of this family, and you're going to throw it all away over a few bad decisions?" I didn't flinch. Those few bad decisions have cost us millions, and they've cost me my place in this family for far too long. I've been your scapegoat, Jonah, but not anymore. His eyes hardened. "You think you can just come in here and take over, huh? You think you can expose all of us and walk away unscathed?" I stood up now, my voice calm but resolute. "I don't need your approval, Jonah. I don't need anyone's. I've been waiting for this moment for too long. I'm not walking away. This is just the beginning." He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He was too overwhelmed, too caught in the web he'd woven. "You did this to yourself," I said quietly, stepping toward him. "Now you'll have to deal with the consequences." Jonah didn't say another word. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the cold certainty that I had just set the wheels in motion for the family's downfall. But it was the only way forward. I sat back down at my desk, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I prepared to send the final pieces of evidence to the legal team. This wasn't just about reclaiming my place at the table. It was about holding them accountable, all of them. It was time for justice, and this time it would be on my terms. The sun had just begun to dip behind the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the old estate. The rose garden, where Elise had spent so many mornings tending to her flowers, was quiet now, still except for the occasional rustle of the leaves in the gentle breeze. I had chosen this place to meet Elaine, hoping it would be fitting for what was to come. After all, it was here that Elise had cultivated the quiet strength I had come to admire. Elaine was already waiting when I arrived, standing with her arms crossed in front of her, her posture rigid, as if she was bracing for something. She wasn't smiling, not anymore. "So this is it, huh?" Elaine said, her voice more brittle than I expected. "You think you can just come in and take control of everything? The company, the estate, the family?" I didn't speak immediately. I just let the weight of the situation hang between us. Elaine had always considered herself the backbone of this family, the one who held it all together with a steady, if cold, hand. But now, standing across from her in this quiet garden, I realized just how fragile that illusion had been. "You've spent years manipulating everyone around you," I said, my voice even. "Pitting me against Lila, pitting me against my own family. You were always so careful to remain just out of reach, close enough to control things, but never close enough to be questioned. And now, you think you can still play the same game with me?" Elaine's eyes hardened. She took a step closer, her heels clicking against the stone path. "You think you're some kind of savior, Nora? That you're going to undo all of this, erase everything we've built? You don't have the strength to handle the truth." I met her gaze without flinching. "The truth is, you've always used everyone around you. You used me, you used Lila, and now you're trying to use Dean." Elaine scoffed, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. "You're so naive," she said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "You think that exposing the truth is going to set you free? No, Nora. Truth doesn't do that. Truth unravels everything. It isolates you. And when you stand alone, you'll realize just how much you've lost." I felt a flicker of something inside me, an old familiar feeling that used to hold me back. But this time, I didn't let it linger. I had come here for clarity, not comfort. "No," I replied firmly, my voice steady. "Truth doesn't isolate you. It sets you free." You've spent your life lying to everyone around you, pretending that you've been the one holding everything together. But you haven't. Elise always knew the truth. She saw through all of your games. She trusted me to carry on what she started. Elaine's face twisted with frustration. Elise was blind. She didn't understand what was really at stake, what it takes to hold power. I don't need power the way you do, I said, cutting her off. I don't need to control everyone. I don't need to manipulate them into doing what I want, but I'm not going to let you keep doing it to me. Elaine stood there for a moment, her eyes narrowing. She opened her mouth as if to say something more, but I didn't give her the chance. I'm done, I said, turning to leave. You can keep your lies, your control. But as for me, I'm going to stand in the truth that Elise saw in me. I didn't look back as I walked away. I knew what she would say, what she would try to convince me of, but I wasn't going to be swayed. The truth I now carried was mine to hold, and it wasn't going to unravel me. It was going to give me the strength to move forward. Elaine could keep the illusion of power. As for me, I had clarity, and for the first time, it felt like enough. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation as I took the stand. My family, my father, stepmother, and brother, sat across from me, their eyes filled with disbelief. They couldn't fathom that this was happening. They couldn't understand that the very world they had built, the one they'd controlled for so long, was crumbling. I adjusted my glasses, my hands steady as I held the stack of evidence in front of me. The documents were irrefutable. The records of embezzlement, the forged signatures, the payments made to offshore accounts. Everything was laid bare. I'd like to submit these documents into evidence, I said calmly, my voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. The judge nodded, motioning for the documents to be processed. The attorneys for my family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My father's lawyer, a well-groomed man in a dark suit, stood and pointed toward me with feigned authority. Your Honor, I'd like to remind the court that these are just allegations. My client has built this company from the ground up. What Nora is claiming is based on hearsay and... I interrupted him, my voice unwavering. I'm not claiming anything, Mr. Davidson. These are facts. I turned to the judge, offering the paperwork. These are records of every transaction, every false report, every dollar stolen from the company. This is the truth. The room fell silent. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. My father, I continued, has been hiding assets for years. He's been siphoning money off the books, using dummy companies and fake consulting contracts to cover his tracks. And my stepmother, Elaine, was the mastermind behind it all. Elaine's face turned pale as the accusations hit their mark. The shock in her eyes quickly turned to defiance, but she couldn't speak. The documents spoke for themselves. I glanced at my father, who had his head down, staring at the table. His arrogance had never looked so fragile. He had believed for so long that he could outsmart everyone, especially me. Mr. Thompson, I said, addressing the judge. I also have a recording. I clicked a button on my phone, and Elise's voice filled the room, soft but clear. The words of a woman who had known betrayal long before it came to light. I have chosen Nora, Elise's recorded voice said, because she has integrity. I know what's coming, and when the time is right, she will do what needs to be done. The courtroom was still. The impact of Elise's words was like a weight dropping on the entire room. My father's face was unreadable, but I saw his knuckles turn white as he gripped the edge of the table. You see, I said, turning to my family, this is the truth. Elise knew what you were capable of. She trusted me to do what was right when the time came, and that time is now. My father's lawyer stood looking shaken. This is outrageous, he snapped. You're claiming that all of this is true based on some recording? This is hearsay. No, I said, my voice steady. This is proof. I turned back to the judge. I have the legal documents to back it up. The transfer of Elise's shares to me. The will, the accounts that were kept hidden. The judge nodded. The court will review all the evidence, but I must say, Ms. Thompson, your case is compelling. My father's lawyer gave up, sitting back down with a look of defeat. He knew he couldn't argue the facts. The judge called a short recess before making a final ruling. But the damage was already done. My family's lies had been exposed in full. The empire they had built on deceit was now unraveling in front of the world. When the judge returned, his decision was swift. The court rules in favor of Nora Thompson. She will retain full control of the estate and the company. The family's assets will be redistributed accordingly. Dean Thompson will be required to return the embezzled funds, and all family members involved in these financial misdeeds will be removed from positions of influence. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was over. The fight had been long, but I had won. The company, the estate, the family legacy. It was all mine now, as it should have been from the start. My father's face was unreadable, but I saw the shift in him, the loss of control, the final blow to his reign. As the courtroom emptied, I felt the weight of the victory, but it was mixed with a quiet, unwavering sense of peace. I had done it. I had reclaimed everything that was rightfully mine, not just for me, but for Elise too. And as I left the courtroom, I didn't look back. The truth had set me free. Now it was time to build a legacy of my own. The lake outside the cabin was still, the water reflecting the early morning sky. I had always loved the silence here, the way it felt as though time slowed down. Elise had found peace in this place, a peace that had now passed on to me. I sat at the old wooden desk in her study, the same one she had used to write letters and work on her business plans. The cabin was quieter now, not just because of the stillness of the lake, but because everything had changed. I was the one in control now, and it wasn't the power I had once thought it would be. It was different. It was freeing. The final paperwork was in front of me. I picked up the last of the transition documents, the ones that would finalize my ownership of the family business, the company that had been my father's pride and my grandmother's legacy. I signed each page carefully, the pen moving with a sense of finality. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I set the signed papers down and opened the cedar chest that had belonged to Elise. The soft scent of aged wood and leather filled the air as I placed the amended will and her journal inside. It felt right to close it all away, to keep her memories safe in this chest. There was no need for a press release, no need for a phone call or a grand announcement. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about integrity. I gently closed the lid of the chest, the sound of the lock clicking into place filling the room. I sat back, feeling a calmness settle in my chest. The house and the business, the legacy of Elise, now bore my name. It wasn't about power or domination. It was about honoring the faith she had placed in me. The silence around me wasn't empty. It was peaceful, a quiet space where I could breathe again. The weight that had been pressing on my shoulders for so long had lifted. I wasn't carrying the burden of family expectations anymore. I was carrying something else, a truth, my truth, and the knowledge that I had finally stepped into the light. This was my legacy now, and for the first time in a long time, I knew it was enough.